Rashima Ingram joins me on the phone. She lives in Freeport. She is there on the Bahamas. Rashima, first of all, where are you right now? Are you safe?
I am safe. I had to relocate, but I'm safe. My family is safe. We're staying at my colleague's house right now. We're on Freeport Ridge, and we're doing well.
You know, we've been watching the pictures and images come out of the Bahamas over the last 2 days, and I mean, it really is breathtaking to see what this storm has done to your island. What did you experience?
What was so significant was the winds. We have never heard winds like that. The gusts of the winds were significant, and we thought that would have been all to it. We thought there may have been some flooding. The NEMA, as well as the government, really did a good job with trying to get people on those coastal communities to move out of those areas before the storm came. But what was unexpected was the extent of the flooding. Many of the communities and the neighborhoods on the northern part of the island in the city of Freeport have had some type of flooding. A lot of those persons had to be evacuated. These are areas that have never had this type of flooding during any type of tropical storm or hurricane before. You had many persons who had been displaced yesterday.
Rashima, you mentioned you're okay. You mentioned that your family's okay. What about your house? Is your house okay?
My house is not okay, and that is not an issue right now. My house has been submerged in water, and that is fine. We're just happy that we were able to get children out, as well as my niece and my nephew, who's 2 weeks old, out of the house in time before we had to really think a real rescue effort needed to be made. So we made the right decision at the right time to evacuate, and we did.
Amen to that. Perspective is important. I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad all of your people are okay as well. Rashima, what are the conditions like right now? Has the rain and wind, has it started to subside?
Well, we are still experiencing we have people who are out, I'm assuming, trying to find some type of relief in terms of getting water and getting foods. We just passed by a small convenience store on East Sunrise Highway, and there were persons outside on the line trying to get food and water. There are some down trees along the roads. It's not as much as we have seen in terms of downed power lines and cable lines in the past Hurricane Matthew. This time, I would say that there have been many of the power lines that have been able to withstand the winds and withstand the rains, and we're happy about that. But it's just a matter now of food and water, because many of the stores in the downtown area and Queens Highway area have flooded. That's where most of the grocery stores and the water depots are. So it's going to be very important for us to be able to get those food items in as soon as possible.
Rashima Ingram there, joining me from the Bahamas. Rashima, thank you, and best of luck to you and your family and all of the people there on the island as well. Good luck, okay?
Yes, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.